What's going on, guys? Jake Boley with BarBend.com. Today we're going to be doing another cross-training review, and we're going to be looking at the Reebok Froning. Over the last year, Rich Froning has worked with Reebok to design this shoe, and he actually wore this at this past year's Regionals, which some people actually noticed on the floor, but the shoe hasn't been released until literally today, November 15th, 2018. So these shoes are fresh. I've had them for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I've been putting them to the test. In this video, I'm gonna give you first looks at their construction, which has some subtle nuances that you don't really see on the site, and we're gonna look at the sizing and performance of the shoe. Are you interested in other cross-training shoes that we've reviewed? Check out our best cross-training shoe roundup and Google BarBend and best cross-training shoes. All right, so now let's talk construction of the Reebok Froning. It's important to keep in mind that Rich Froning and Reebok both created this shoe to be perfect for Froning's needs, and he mentioned that he wants a shoe that he can both compete in and wear on a day-to-day basis. That being said, there's a lot of construction features on this model that differ from the Speed TR version Reebok makes and also the Nano models that Reebok makes. So a couple things to note about this shoe, and we're gonna start from the toe and work to the heel. So up here on the toe, on the outer layer, we have what Reebok calls toe protection, which is basically this protective layer that protects the toe from things like dragging the toes and burpees or toes to bar, and it adds a little bit of cushion there, and it isn't so flexible like the mesh here, so it does add a little bit of protection for any kind of impact movements. Looking at the midsole, we have a midsole layer that wraps up pretty evenly throughout. On the medial side here, it has that little dip with some EVA foam here on the medial side of the base of the metatarsals. Anytime you're dragging your toe a lot for things like burpees or something like that, or any kind of movement where you're almost like crawling, that toe lip up here that only comes up in the middle can be prone to early durability issues, so I really like this flat build. Working to the midfoot construction, we have a synthetic mesh material here. As you can see, it's pretty maneuverable. And then what's different about this model compared to the other models, outer construction, is that it has a Dyneema material to it, which is basically a material that is designed to be more durable, a little bit more lightweight, and breathable compared to others in the market, and it's like a composite of different fibers and fabrics. So that's gonna add a little bit of durability to this model itself on the outer construction. There are 6 eyelets that run up. That's similar to a lot of Reebok models. I like that because you can either pull to the 6th eyelet up here or stop at the 5th if you like having a little bit more of the ankle flexion. And something cool about this model that's different than other ones I've seen is that if you look inside here, inside the shoestrings, we have an additional layer of material. So this strap here adds a little bit of extra stability, and it kind of adds a little bit of natural reaction. So watch, now it snaps back. I thought that was really cool, especially for doing things like running and jumping, where I need a lot of toe flexion, a lot of natural reaction. This adds a little bit more stability, and especially if you don't like lacing to the 6th eyelet, I think that's a huge perk. And honestly, I wish Reebok would start doing it for all their cross-training shoes. Making our way to the tongue. The tongue is a little bit wider. It's pretty well padded. It's not very thin like some of the other cross-training shoes on the market. If you're worried about the tongue being wide enough, as you can see, it's pretty much as wide as the model itself. You don't have to worry. Making our way to the heel, we have an EVA foam right here on the outsole, and that's form-fitted to how the foot's gonna pretty much lay. As you can see, it kind of goes around down here on the heel and then around up here on the heel. Working our way to the midfoot and the heel's lower half, we have an EVA foam here to add a little bit of cushion, but also some firmness for any kind of ground impact or weight-bearing movements. On the heel itself, we have this rubber area that comes up. That adds a nice level of protection there and stability to the heel. I can't really compress it that well. Working our way to the outsole, we have a multi-direction traction. So as you can see here, we have ridges here that go to the outside, and that's supposed to provide a little bit of additional traction for lateral movements. And then we have ridges here that go front and back, and that's for like running backwards, running forwards, obviously. And then on the back here, we have actually a slicker, not totally slick, but a little bit less rigid material, and that's to provide a little bit extra stability into the heel for doing things like compound movements. Again, these are made to be for lifting and day-to-day. We have a metatarsal split going through the midfoot. I thought that was a pretty cool feature for not giving a total like block feel when using these shoes. It adds a little bit more natural reaction. As you can see, it compresses a little bit, so you can really grip the ground. All in all, those are the big construction features of this model. It feels really good in terms of wearing on a day-to-day basis for walking and also lifting in. I didn't notice much compression at all under heavy weights, but I'll talk about that more in the performance section. All right, so now let's talk sizing of the Reebok Froning. In all of our cross-training and lifting shoes, I wear size 10, and that's to give you a better idea of if you should size up, size down, or stay true to size with the model. So now these are a size 10. I'm usually pretty true to size in terms of my shoe size, and I have a slightly more narrow foot, so I'm gonna let you know how this feels. I'm gonna go ahead and lace this up all the way and double knot it to give you guys an idea of how much shoestring comes on this, and also what it looks like when it's fully laced up in case you're gonna do a heavy workout in these and you want it a little tighter. So ample shoestring here. I'm definitely not lacking in terms of double knotting if I want to. And also it's a pretty good amount if you don't like the double knot, and it doesn't really hang over. So that's a big perk if you don't like the double knot. All right, now where does this shoe fit on my foot? So one thing I noticed upon my initial reaction to these shoes is that the toe box is decently wide for them. They have a slimmer midfoot design because this is like a more athletic shoe that you can wear on a day-to-day basis or for a workout. So I was a little bit concerned about the forefoot having too little material or base to really grip the ground on. The toe box is decently wide. I can fully splay my toes here and not have any limitation to it. And also the synthetic mesh here on the medial side provides a little bit of flexibility. I'm a big fan of that, especially for day-to-day wear. In terms of where my toe is up here on the actual toe, we have about a ½ inch from the top here. As you can see, I can press in and there's no toe sitting there. They're pretty true to size in all honesty, and I think that if you're gonna size down, that's gonna be a little bit risky, especially if you are true to size or you're pushing your true size limit. So I would say stay true to size with this model. I also like having a little bit of room up here so I don't continue to get toe jamming in things like burpees or toes to the bar where your toes can really take a beating if they're too close to this mid and outsole. In terms of where it sits in the heel, it's pretty low cut here. It doesn't really rub on the malleolus, and I'm wearing low socks. As you can see, there's no friction there from what I've noticed in my workouts and runs in these shoes. So all in all, if you're looking into the Reebok Froning, I would say go true to size. All right, so now let's talk performance of the Reebok Froning. To get a full rundown of the performance of this model, I'm gonna include more detail in the written review, so be sure to check that out. I'm gonna give a quick synopsis now for a day-to-day wear and a performance in terms of workout. So on a day-to-day basis, I wore this shoe for the last week, and I wore them to and back from work, and on average, I walk like 3 to 4-ish miles, and sometimes more depending on what I'm doing after work. All in all, I thought this was a pretty comfortable model. The midsole and outsole aren't incredibly tough, so it doesn't feel too hard, like it doesn't feel like you're basically walking on pavement. It gives enough cushion to provide a little bit of comfort all around the board, whether it's walking up or down stairs or walking up hills, etc. The heel here is pretty padded, so there was no friction on the medial, lateral, or the Achilles, and that's a big perk for day-to-day wear. I don't like the thinner material that kind of scrapes up the shoe, especially if you're wearing low-cut socks like I am now. In terms of workout performance, these shoes did pretty good at resisting compression. I thought the high abrasion outsole was an awesome feature, especially for any compression of the heel or toe during squats and deadlifts. I squatted up to 315 in these and didn't notice any compression. Also, the fact that Rich Froning tested these for a year and wore them at regionals, I have a pretty good feeling that these are going to be pretty good at resisting any form of compression under weight-bearing movements. For things like rope climbs, toe to bar, and burpees, I like the toe tension up here. Provides a little extra beef and layer for protecting the toe, so there's no toe jamming, whether it be hitting the bar or dragging on the ground. Granted, the outside here is a little bit slicker for rope climbs, but all in all, that's a small detail, and that's a very small niche of people who are going to be using these shoes for that. So all in all, these shoes were pretty good on a day-to-day, pretty comfortable. I'd give them like a 7 out of 10. In terms of workout performance at resisting compression, I'd give them about an 8.5, 9 out of 10. And in terms of things like rope climbs or more versatile movements like burpees or toes to bar, I'd give them about a 9 out of 10 due to the toe tension up here and the firm durability on the outer construction. All right, so now let's talk price of the Reebok Froning. For this model, you can expect to pay around $150. Now, in terms of other Reebok shoes, it is a slightly more pricey cross-training option. Granted, this is a Rich Froning signature model, so it does have a little bit of that limited edition feel to it, and it's also a pretty durable shoe since he did test them for over a year. So in terms of getting your money's worth, I think this is a pretty good bet if you're a Froning fan or you're worried about the durability. I don't think it's going to break down anytime soon on you, and it's designed to be worn on a day-to-day basis or in the gym, so it is a versatile model. So all in all, yeah, the price is slightly more expensive, but if you really want that niche shoe and you're a Froning fan, then I could see it fitting the bill. In terms of pros that come along with the Reebok Froning, I found 3 things that I really liked. Number 1 was the outer construction. I was a big fan of the synthetic mesh and the Nano fabric. I thought it added a lot of durability to the outskirts. Granted, this is a new model on the market, but since Froning did test these for so long, I have a good feeling they're gonna last. And plus, I have a pretty good idea that Froning probably wanted a shoe that could withstand the beating that he was putting them under. Number 2 is the stability on the heel here. So there is no defined plastic cup, and I think that that's a perk for a lot of athletes or shoe wearers who want a more day-to-day shoe and they don't want that kind of that glaring plastic on the back of the model. This adds a lot of stability on the heel here, this firmer material, and also I thought that the heel itself in terms of the outsole and midsole were pretty firm. In terms of my final pro with this model, and I've talked about this a couple times, it has to be this additional strap on the midfoot. So it provided a lot of extra stability and reaction when doing running or any kind of jumping movement, and I wish that Reebok would start doing this for all their models. I was a big fan of it. It didn't feel limiting. It didn't feel like it was weighing down the tongue or adding an extra layer that didn't really need to be there. So in terms of my pros, outer construction, heel stability, and this midfoot additional strap. All right, let's talk cons with the Reebok Froning. I had two potential cons I could see users having with this model. Number one is that it is a slightly heavier cross-training shoe. Each shoe comes out to about 11.1 ounces, and in terms of weight compared to other Reebok models, it's definitely on the heavier end. If you want a shoe for strictly running, they might feel a little bit heavy, but in all honesty, that's not gonna be really a concern for a lot of users. But I figured I'd mention in the cons section, if you want a very lightweight shoe, the flex weave tends to be a little bit lighter in like the Reebok Speed TR or the Nano models, so that's something to kind of keep in mind, depending on the use you want the shoe for. My last con is the price. So this model comes in around $150, so that is a little bit more expensive than other cross-training shoes on the market. Granted, this is a signature model made by Rich Froning, so if you're a Froning fan, then I don't think the price is really that much of a concern. This is a very durable shoe. It's not gonna break down fast on you. And he tested them for over a year, so I have a pretty good feeling that they're gonna be durable. So all in all, those are my two cons that come with the Reebok Froning. That concludes my review of the Reebok Froning. A big thank you to Reebok for sending us this model to try out, test, and review. If you want to read more of my full thoughts on how the shoe performed and the full construction rundown in written form, Google BarBend and Reebok Froning.